Hello and welcome to the Fishing Guide Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Wiegmann, and I am here with Greg Robinson, and he's like here all the time. I think he just hides out in the studio here.
There you go.
And gets on the show.
That's right, yeah.
He's like, can I be on
to drive by at the right time.
He does too. The good news is there's so many things that you do. I mean, you do marine electronic installs. You do like installs of other, products onto people's boats.
Yes,
and then you're a fishing guide and you're a hunter and I don't know when you find time to do
Jack of all trades and a master of a none.
There you go. There you go. But he's a really good crappie fisherman, and we're up on that time of year where we're talking about crappie fishing because people are getting excited about it.
Sure.
And as you and I both know, we were out on Monday, and it was like a zoo.
Oh, that wind was just rocking and rolling.
Wind was bad, and the parking lots were full.
Yeah.
I mean,
and all the boats was in about 3 spots. And the wind was still bad there.
It's funny because we went by and grandson was driving. I said, don't slow up, make a big wake on him. And then I was thinking as we slowed up and we stopped farther away from you, didn't wake you. We got farther away. I'm like, what am I worried about? There's like 2-foot waves coming over him right now.
I don't know which one was the best.
That's right. But Greg, tell us, we're on that period of time where we're going to talk about bobbers. I love it because look at the shirt that you wore kind of fills in with the topic we wanted to talk about, which was bobber fishing. Mm-hmm. And first, tell us about bobbers in general. Just give us a description.
You got their different selection. Of course, thrill bobbers are mostly made out of balsa wood.
Uh-huh.
And they Dutch some of the newer ones that says premium wood. I'm not really sure the difference. And then you got your old plastic clip-on bobbers, of course, and most of your thrill bobbers people think of them for being a slip bobber, which they do make. They make the pencils and the ovals, and some will have a stem on the top and the bottom. The line goes through it, and you put a bobber stop on it to control that.
And that's your slip rig. Right.
Yes, that's a slip bobber rig.
Tell us in case they've never done it.
So if you were, say for an example, you're fishing a brush pile and you got some fish, and the brush pile the top of the brush pile comes up to say 8 feet in the water, but you got the fish that's suspended right there on the top. And this time of year, you have a tendency to either you're moving your bait too fast as you're coming through trying to cast. A jig. So you can put a slip bobber on there and pitch it out there and let it settle down, say 5 feet, even 6 feet, 7 feet, and just let that bait sit there. And with the action to our lures that we have in today's time, with just a little bit of breeze and that bobber movement, it can give that lure a lot of action to the point that they're not having to chase it. And they'll just come up and do that, and it's very effective this time of year, plumb into to the spawn.
Well, how big is a slip bobber usually?
You can get different sizes. I got a 1/16 and an 1/8 and a 1/4, and the size of those will according to the size of weight that it will handle, and so the 1/4, of course, it's a bigger round, and it'll hold a heavier bait versus the 1/16 ounce.
Are some of those bobbers weighted then to help you
They
cast?
do have some that are weighted to help hold the bobber up in the upright position. I don't particularly like the weighted ones. I like just without a weight. In fact, I use a lot of times, I'll be in a situation where I'm jig fishing or vertical jigging, and I carry the little oval ball, so it's got a little spring in the bottom. It's got a little hook, and you just run your line in there, push the spring down over your line, and it'll hold it in place to a degree until you set the hook a time or two, and then you'll have to readjust it. But you don't have to put a slip knot or anything, and it'll kind of hang off to the side of your line. But when you put it out there, it's so light, it just lays a little bit, and you get on those light bites, it'll stand them bobbers up, and you'll know even sometimes before they jerk it under, that you've got them. So I like those.
Some of the pencil ones made to stand up, and
Yes,
then when
sir.
a crappie bites, then it makes it
Layover.
go lay over. So there's two different bites you look
exactly. Yeah. So if they're hitting it and coming up on the bobber, then it'll do that. It'll lay over, and you can set the hook. Otherwise, it'll be laying a little bit of a slope or something, and you'll just see it just barely deal, and then you can get it too.
So those oval bobbers and some of those other bobbers are two colors. Is there a reason why they're two colors?
Well, so you can see them. I mean, for
it's not for the weight of the thing.
No.
All right.
I think it's just because they're all pretty much three, or they're pretty much the same. Now going to the plastic clip-on bobbers, I've used those over the years as well, and I've got one that's just totally round, and then you have one that's tapered.
Okay.
And I if I'm going to use one, I prefer the tapered one because it has less resistance when it's pulling under the water. But in light conditions, if I was using that type of bobber before I started using thrill, I would a lot of times turn my bobber upside down.
Right.
Because otherwise you got the oval part kind of sitting down, so your bobber with a jig is sitting like this, and if they're just barely hitting it, they got to pull it enough on that big of a bug. They got to pull that oval up to where they stand it up, so you don't notice it as easy. So if you turn it over the other way, and the top end is down, so now your bobber's sitting like this in the water, and when they hit this end of it, it'll lay that bobber up flat.
I got you.
And then you get a light bite.
All right.
So that's what I do with those.
So tell us conditions that you're looking for when you're bobber fishing. Bobber and jig and bobber, or jig and a minnow.
Yeah, well, this time of year, just like you said, and later in the day, especially, we got a big rain today, so we're going to get some stained water. And hopefully that water that's going to be coming in isn't any colder than what we already have.
Right.
And if it's not, in other words, we're setting at 40, I think Monday when I was out here, 42, 43 degree water.
Yep.
So if that water is not any colder coming in, it will heat up quicker than if it's super cold water.
Right.
And so you take this stained water coming in, a bright sunny day, 60-degree day, or afternoon 50, and a real good sunny day, those fish are going to move up in that column, and they can either suspend or they'll be close to structure somewhere. Standing timber is really good because they'll just come up in that standing timber, and they'll just sit there, and you can take them bobbers and set them about 4 foot, and you can catch several fish that way.
So, standing timber, is there an area of the lake like feeder creeks, or are you on the main lake?
Mainly the feeder creeks and the coves has got some standing timber in them, or some structure.
Right.
And they will get up on some of these flats because of the lake will have a tendency to rise a little bit.
Right.
And then you'll get, like if you get far enough up in the river, it's almost like a little eddy or something. There'll be just a little intake pocket that the water will come in. And a lot of times it'll be a little bit clearer there, but it won't be moving water.
Right.
And because of the river. And you can get in those little deal and get around little bushes under the water and stuff, and they'll move in there in the afternoons. Yeah. And then you can get them about 2 foot.
Monofilament or braid or fluorocarbon?
I'm a monofilament guy.
Okay.
I'm not a braid guy. Right. Never have. I've tried it numerous of times. So I'm just strictly a mono guy.
With your
6 to 8 pound
yep.
test. Mm-hmm.
Oh, all right. Yep. So now let's talk about lures. What are you going to use for lures to catch those fish underneath a slip bobber? Does it change for a slip bobber compared to just
not
a
whole lot. I mean, I use a lot of the plastics. Of course, the Bobby Garlands, baby shads are really good. Minnow minders are good. And a lot of times this time of year, I'll go to a hair jig. And I do a lot with hair
right out of
jigs.
your beard?
Yeah,
You just trim
right,
like
right.
if you lose a jig, you
Exactly.
just.
Yeah.
I'd take it off my hair, my head, but I would my jigs would be bald.
Yes, sir. I use on the hair jigs. I use Ruben Flores's jigs.
He's famous.
They're a hand tied jig over here in Oklahoma, and in fact, I have a discount code with them if anybody wants to.
He's well known for his jigs.
Yes,
like at the Crappie Expo, a lot of people
years
I know.
ago.
Yeah, we're talking about him and his jigs. So
yeah, and even though they're hand tied, a lot of times you have a tendency they just won't last long. He seems to hold up very well and last as long. They're worth the money.
So you're casting it out even with the hair jig and letting it sit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that hair just opens up and it really does well under a bobber.
So do you use minnows or not when you're using a slip bobber?
Not
you
too
ever
much
use
on
just
the slip
a hook
bobber.
and a no?
About the only time I use minnow is in the fall of the year. Sometimes I'll tip with a minnow on jigging, but most of the time, about all the time I ever used minnows is when I'm spider rigging. All right. Mostly on jigs, I just do. I like the hair jig this time of year a lot on the bobber because of the action of the bait.
Right.
Versus the plastic.
Yeah, hair jigs, Malibu jigs.
Even a Malibu jig is good this time of year.
But no minnows, huh?
Not very often.
Well, you're keeping your hands dry and warm.
That's
Is that what you're telling me?
Right. My hands get very cold if it's below 40. and trust me, that minnow bucket, it feels good at first when you dip in there. But after that, no. So...
You have to have Lance come around, and Lance could just bait your hooks.
When I fish with Lance, I say, even before he got it, when I fished with Lance, I told him, I said, "You're my guide today." In other words, you're at least going to get that minnow out of that bucket.
What else can you tell us about bobber fishing? I know a lot.
Well, I mean, it's not just for crappie. There's a lot of bluegill. People use them. Yeah. A lot of the thrills is real good too. They got them smaller ones you can get this spring when the bluegill bite picks up, and they're really good for that and that sort of thing too.
How about live scoping? How does that play into bobber fishing? You literally can see your jig.
Yeah,
sitting
you
there
can.
suspended.
In fact, if you'll remember, we was on Lake Washington. Was it 2 years ago?
Yeah, it's 2 years ago.
We went down there, and the big cold blast and the snow, the lake froze over down there and just thawed out when we got there. And if you'll remember, in that last day, all of us struggled catching fish that week. We all did. Yep. And anyway, the day before, I had Mitch, PICO Lure, on the boat with me. Right. And we got up in them cypress trees where those fish were staging before that major front hit. And if you'll remember what we was doing to catch those fish, and we caught more fish that afternoon than the other people, and what we were doing is I started going in there to spider rig it, and I got to seeing the fish were real skittish with the live scope. We were in 6 to 4 foot of water. Yep. 8 to 4, something like that. And you could see the bunches of crappie. And so what we did, we were taking a bobber 2 foot below, put a jig 2 feet below the bobber. And we were taking our 16-foot B&M pose and just lobbing it out about 18, 20 feet in front of us. And I'd take the power, as soon as I seen the fish, because they was real skittish, I'd drop the power pose and hold the boat, and we'd flip out there, and we'd catch 2 to 3 out of the school until they'd move, and then we'd pick up and move again and do that. So the bobber was very effective at that time too.
And if anyone's walking around with bobbers in their pockets, it's Mitch. Mitch always has bobbers in his pocket.
That is true.
So if you ever run out,
he'll have a curl tail jig. Yeah. He seems like he always has a package of curl tail jigs with him.
If you run out of bobbers on the lake, you just track them down, and he'll have some. He'll have extra for you, and there's no doubt about that.
Exactly.
But that's the good thing. I mean,
but once this water temperature gets above that 45 and starts nearing into 50, the bobber fishing will pick up.
Yeah, we're gonna be by this show's couple weeks. Really just a couple weeks. It's gonna happen. That's February. I mean,
exactly.
So that's by then, and I've always heard dirty water warms up quicker.
It will, depending on how
water.
cold it was when it got in the start.
Right. It was pretty warm. So, and I mean the thing about using a slip bobber and fishing is it doesn't have to be just right here in the Ozarks on these trees.
You can be anywhere.
You can go take that, and we were doing cypress Neals down on Lake Washington. That's what we were fishing.
Yeah, right.
Down in there. So,
and I mean, there's you can, if you're where you could fish it, it needs to be fished slow. I mean, you can fish a slip bobber 20 foot deep. Yep. You can go straight down on them. So
there's the tip: fish slow.
You bet.
Slow.
That's the trick.
That takes us to Tackle Time. Tackle Time sponsored by PICO Lures. PICO Lures also has a complete line of terminal tackle by Vanguard. They have some floats and bobbers, so you have your option. You can, if Vanguard doesn't have them, then you can
go to lurenet.com.
That's right. Get them there. But he's got everything. I actually used the big 9-inch Big Daddy fillet knife on a 20-pound striper the other day.
Oh, really?
Super sharp German steel. Cut it through just like butter, buddy.
There you go.
And so we've cut that up. We're going to smoke one of the stripers, take all the red meat out so it's not real strong, and we're going to try that. So they have everything. They got tools, and they got, man, you name it, they got it. But you can check all those products out on PICOLures.com. And, of course, they also have hard and soft baits that you can go bass fishing. Walleye fishing is going to happen here real soon.
Real quick.
Yep. So you can check that out there at PICOLures.com. Greg, if they wanted to find out more about you, of course, we didn't touch on it much, but he doesn't do electronic installs here in Northwest Arkansas. You're also an authorized dealer for
Trophy Craft Systems.
That's right. So
and
where would they get in contact with you?
Through Facebook on Greg Robinson or gregsguideservice.com or 479-601-1683.
There you go. There you have it. Like I always like to end the show. Make sure you keep your hook sharp.
And your baits in the water.
Baits in the water. Whoa.